Salutations, my fellow food lovers. This is Chef Mark here from Johnny's Italian Steakhouse, and I want to tell you about our filet Oscar. This premium filet is topped with Johnny's lump crab cake, grilled asparagus, and our signature béarnaise sauce. But the start to any great night always begins with a killer appetizer. And I recommend trying out our jumbo pan-seared sea scallops with Brussels sprout slaw tossed in Johnny's hot bacon dressing. It is so good. I know that you will love my filet Oscar as much as I love preparing it. So come to Johnny's tonight. Johnny's Italian Steakhouse, Village Point Shopping Center, Omaha.
In the age of COVID, this has become like a huge thing. And this is kind of how my whole podcast was kind of born out of that. A lot of artists are stuck at home and can't perform, so they're talking with me, and it's been great. A lot of people who just need to get out there, and as you know, the bread and butter is in live performing, so they've been doing these concerts on Facebook or whatnot.
Right.
What it's all down to. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, you just, again, talking about social media, you popped up. I was like, this seems pretty interesting. It's nice to be able to stumble on great talent. And
thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been a process. It's been a process. I mean, I have, 4 albums out, and I came to this late in the game because I was actually a classically trained actor initially. And ended up coming and doing some television and really didn't enjoy the work. And my dad passed away. He was a jazz piano player. And I thought, I've always wanted to sing jazz. So I just kind of hung up my acting chops and decided to just pursue music at 150%.
Yeah.
So
become all in, I'm sure. I love jazz.
That's what it takes. Yeah.
So in acting, what were you doing, and how long were you doing that?
Well, when I was actually in high school, I was in the drama department, and then I fell in love with it, and ended up going to an acting school in LA called Los Angeles City College. Had a big acting program, and then decided I really wanted to get into Juilliard. So I auditioned. I didn't get accepted, but I ended up getting accepted at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. So under the auspices of Bill Ball, William Ball, and Alan Fletcher, which is when it was really rich. I mean, that's when Annette Bening went there and Denzel Washington went there. So I studied there and then decided to move to New York. And so, not real intelligent, because it's like you think, okay, well, I have all these connections now on the West Coast, and now I'm going to go to the East Coast.
Challenge yourself. Why not?
Yes. Well, I really wanted to do Broadway. I wanted to do serious theater, but I think there are a handful of actors that have managed to make a living in regional theater, and where you can do Ibsen and Shaw and Chekhov and Shakespeare. And so I ended up going to New York and had worked really, really hard, started dancing, worked my butt off, and was dancing like 5-6 hours a day, and then started getting noticed in New York on the short list for understudying leads on Broadway and so forth and so on. And then one day I had just gotten back from doing Anita in West Side Story in Philadelphia, and I was in class and I did a jump and came down and my knee gave out, my whole leg gave out, and that was kind of the end of it.
I can feel it. It's so disappointing. It's like, oh my gosh. But what discipline you get from dancing, though, that probably trained you.
Yeah, dancing and classical theater. I mean, believe it or not, it's, you learn fencing, you learn accents, it's a whole program that you go through. You learn voice, because believe it or not, doing Shakespeare can be as physically demanding as singing opera. I mean, you're not singing, but you're speaking. And some of the soliloquies and so forth are so rich, and they go on and on and on, and you have to know where to breathe, and so on it goes, so you learn all of this stuff. And I'm glad I spent time in New York. And when that happened, I thought, at that point, theater was going through a really kind of depressed time, and a lot of theaters were dark. There wasn't a lot of work. And I thought, maybe it's just time for me to move to Los Angeles, because my mom was out here. And so I moved out here. I'm originally from Miami. I was born and raised in
Oh,
Miami.
wow, you're
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. For
Well,
those who don't know, yeah, it's like
the
you from Miami.
triangle, right? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it is a
Uh,
triangle. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my dad was a jazz piano player and he lived in Miami, and that was the place to be back in the heyday, right? Because he worked with everybody. And my mother, when they got divorced, my mother moved out here. So, you know, I came out to LA and back to LA and decided to, pursue some TV, and did a little bit of TV, and hated the work, just really hated the work, because TV is really a producer's medium. And I think now it's really different. I mean, the quality of television, we are like in a golden age of TV now in terms of the characters, the character
Yeah.
development, the writing, the production value. It's really almost like film.
It is, and it looks like it too. Yeah, if you look
Yeah.
at the quality, the Netflix shows and Apple TV. I mean, it's everywhere. There's so
Have
many
you
streaming
watched
services.
Perry Mason? Have you
Yeah, I
watched
love it. Oh my gosh, he's
and
amazing.
Terrence Blanchard, who's writing the music, knocks it out of the ballpark. I mean, I'm just so impressed with his work. I mean, he's won like what, 5 Grammy Awards and so forth. But anyway, so
Yeah,
that's the story. And so I just decided, maybe it's time to really use my voice, because it's always been a natural thing that I've had. And of course, I studied with a lot of great teachers. I studied voice because I have a big voice, and so I had to learn to maneuver it.
yeah, it takes that kind of
So
training, and yeah,
yeah,
how you're
yeah. I mean, it
projecting.
was never opera. I never studied opera. I almost
Mm,
wish that I had gone into music out of high school. But, being a rebellious kid, I'm like, no, my parents are in music. I don't want to be in music. I'm going to be an actor.
I always do opposite of the
Yeah,
parents. I have a
I
daughter. It's
know,
like
right?
go the opposite way. Like, oh
Right.
my gosh.
So here I am. I when I decided to do this, I went to Vibrato Jazz Club, which is Herb Albert's jazz club out here. And I talked to the musical director out there, and I said, who would you recommend as a musical director? Because I want to start singing jazz. So he recommended a man named Tom Garvin, who got behind me. My first show ever in jazz was at the legendary Jazz Bakery out here. And we recorded Dangerous Liaisons, which was my first record. And then Tom passed away, unfortunately. He got colon cancer. And so Kim Richmond, who was in my band, kind of stepped in, and Tom had said you should look at Kim, because Tom knew he had, he went through all of that, and I was kind of his medical legal advocate through that, because he didn't have any kids, he didn't have a wife, and he asked me, he said, would you be willing to help me through this? And I said, yeah. So Kim came in, and we did what we've termed as a jazz noir album called Restless, was my second. And then I kind of decided, okay, I want to really break out and do something different. So I decided my third album was called The Arrangement. I don't know how familiar you are with all this work, but the arrangement, I thought, okay, I'm going to really focus on the arrangements of there were 5 arrangers that I wanted to work with. And I said to them, look, you guys, these are the songs I think would be right for you to arrange.
Yeah.
Go wherever you want to go with this creatively. And then, they did that. They wrote out the arrangements. I worked with them before going into the studio. And then I said to them, hire whatever musicians you want to hire for your sessions. So we did that. And the arrangement came out. There were 3 originals. I did write 3 songs on the album. And so, as you're an artist and as you journey through all of this, as you grow, you begin to look at things, you begin to want to try new things. You don't want to for me, I don't want to just stay in the same lane.
It's good to reinvent yourself. How many great
Yeah.
artists have done that? And I just love that because their catalog is so much more varied. The arrangement came out
Yes.
about 6 years ago, and it has gotten some notice in jazz circles. I noticed that.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because there were 14 songs, and there were songs on there that don't get recorded a lot. I mean, I recorded Guess Who I Saw Today, which now Samara Joy is having a big hit with. And I don't think anybody I know.
Yeah.
I saw her the other night. Yeah, yeah.
It was at the Grammys. She was nominated.
Well, she
Yeah.
was at the Grammys.
Oh
Yeah,
my
were you there?
gosh. No, I wish I was, but I
Yeah,
was reading
yeah,
up on it. I stumbled on her. I looked her up on Amazon Music and was mesmerized. Yeah. What
yeah.
an
Well,
amazing.
yeah, she was out here just last Sunday with the John Clayton Hamilton Orchestra.
Mm.
And so I got to see her Sunday night. So yeah, but the arrangement, there were songs like Guess Who I Saw Today, and I did we did Eleanor Rigby, which
Yeah.
nobody has really recorded in many years, and we did a very different take on it. And
Come unwrap some holiday magic this season in Denver, where the lights are brighter and the shopping is grander. The shows are more spectacular, the trees taller, the festivities merrier. So come for your holiday traditions or make some new ones with your friends and family in the Mile High City, where the season feels a whole lot more wonderful. Discover great hotels and more things to do at milehighholidays.com.
yeah, so I'm very proud of that album. And then I decided to do almost a completely original album and wanted to, the arrangement was very big. It had horns, it had lots of instruments in it. And that tends to be my wheelhouse. The more sounds, the better,
Your wall of sound.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. But I thought, maybe it's time to just really strip it down and do something that's a little bit more, just more not honest, because everything I've done is I try to make as real and as heartfelt and honest as possible. But this particular album, I wrote these songs and I wanted them to be really, I wanted it to be really just, I don't even know what the word is, just to keep it really honest and simple. I didn't want it to have a lot of bells and whistles, right?
Yeah. More organic.
Yes, more organic. That's the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for. And so we didn't even have there was only two songs that were arranged on the album, which is Red Velvet Rope, and then the Leonard Cohen song I do on the album, which is Boogie Street. Nobody's
Yeah.
recorded Boogie Street.
That's amazing. Yeah. The greatest. Leonard
I
Cohen.
know.
My gosh.
I know.
Does it get
I
any
know.
better?
He's one of my real influences because his writing is so interesting
Yeah.
and complex. And, but everything else, we just went in the studio and I brought in, really great players. And I said, okay, guys, let's just find this here. And it was a little bit risky to do that because all they had was a lead sheet. And we kind of found our way through it. And so we did end up with a really organic album. It doesn't have, I didn't challenge my range. I didn't go up really high. And I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted it to just be the stories, right? So that's kind of, what I've done to this point. And
Really nice and personal. And you got a great cast of characters on this project as well, which came out, last fall?
It came out last May, and it was on the Grammy ballot. It didn't get a nomination, unfortunately, but we're working toward it. I'm in a brewing period now where I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back in the studio next year and record another album, and I want it to be original material. So just not sure what I'm going to do.
Yeah. It'll strike you when you least expect it.
I'm figuring it out.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of artists, and it's like it's so great to have the smartphones. They just pull over to the side of the road. Got a great lyric here. I can get it in the phone. We don't have to drag the notebook around anymore.
I know. Well, it's really the way it is. You see something or hear something, and it inspires you to write about it, and then it's kind of sitting down and doing the work and figuring out, it's tricky when you write because you want the story to resonate. You want it to resonate inside of you, but you also need it to resonate with the listener, because if what you're writing about isn't universal enough to really reach the listener, then nobody's going to care about the work, right? I mean, it's a tricky thing to find something that's personal to you that also really matters to a lot of other people too,
Yeah. So true.
That
When
makes sense.
you're doing the lyrics, do you come into the studio and rework the lyrics, or you're pretty much it's already done and ready to go?
It's
You,
pretty much already done. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I work on something until I feel like it's in a form where then I give it to, I'll reach out to one of my collaborators and say, let's see what we've got here. And then sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, well, we need to move this around a little bit for the melody. And then I'll go and, I'll switch out a couple of sentences or move a few things around, so we kind of collaborate that way. But usually by the time we get to the studio, it's ready to be recorded. Yeah.
It's good to be prepared, but some people do. They'll start like reworking things in the studio, and those, the final lyrics might be way different before you went in. So that's something
Yeah.
that's, when your collaborators are like getting a hold of your lyrics and say, hey, how about this line, that line? So it sounds like you got some really good people you're working with. Jeff Colella, who has worked with Lou Rawls. I've seen Lou
Right.
Rawls. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what a great performer.
Yeah, Jeff is great. I've worked with Jeff since I started this thing. He was in my original band with Tom Garvin. Tom brought him in, and Tom was Jack Jones's musical director, and then went on, and then he stepped down, and Jeff became Jack Jones's musical director for a while. And then I had on Signature, I have Tom Garvin. I don't know if you know who Tom is.
I've heard that name.
He's pretty amazing. I mean, I didn't really realize how amazing he was until we were in the studio. I mean, he's one of the first call studio musicians in LA, and so he works very differently than everybody else. I mean, he shows up, and he usually will do one take, and it's usually the take. It doesn't get redone. It's like, okay, usually he said to me, the first take is always the best. And so, he worked with Lady Gaga, and he was Tony Bennett's musical director for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he
Worked
was
on Love for Sale. Was that
yeah,
the, yeah.
yeah, he was on the Love for
Yeah.
Sale album with Gaga and Bennett.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just such a consummate musician. But he's so busy, I can't get him all the time.
And high demand. Yeah, definitely.
I
Creme de la
know.
creme. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Kiki Valera is showing up on your release here.
Kiki?
I've definitely, yeah. I love that vibe. So you must be really into the Latino music. It's
Well, growing up in Miami.
Oh, absolutely. Coconut Grove. I remember going there. It's
yes.
like blasting everywhere. Yeah, totally in Miami. So your dad, Don Ippolito, has worked with some real serious legends.
Yeah. Well, my dad was interesting because he was in World War II, and he was doing arranging for the big bands while he was in the army. He actually went to Italy and I guess got an honorable discharge because he was working the cannons and got some hearing damage. But when he came back, he was really in love with Duke Ellington, and so he told me a story where he saw Duke Ellington when he was a boy. He was living in Philadelphia, not Philadelphia, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and Ellington was coming to Newcastle for a concert. I think he said there was like a 1,200 seat theater, and he said there were only ended up being like 200 people there. It was right at the beginning. I don't think Ellington was I'm not sure where he was at in his career at that point, but he said Ellington, apparently they lost their music on the train. And so Ellington would always carry a briefcase with all of his handwritten charts back in the day when they actually hand wrote out charts. I have my dad's music library because he passed away, and it's all handwritten. It just blows my mind. It's all handwritten in pencil. Yeah. And so Ellington basically laid his charts out. My dad told me the story, laid his charts out at the foot of the stage, and the guys lined up and they played the concert. So, yeah. So,
incredible.
He was a funny guy. He didn't like playing Fender Rhodes. He only wanted to play real piano. And, he traveled with Buddy Rich. He played with Iris Sullivan. I posted some footage of him. I had his concert that they did at Channel 2, PBS. They he did several concerts down in Miami for PBS Channel 2 with his arrangements and big band. So they're on my YouTube site.
Yeah, it's a great site. And also we see the making of your latest release, which I really appreciated. That really brings you up to speed as to how, with the secret to the sauce of such a great release. It's just, if anybody goes to that YouTube channel, is it under your name or just do a search for you in YouTube?
Yeah, it's Sylvia Brooks. But if you do a search for me on YouTube, it'll come up as well. Yeah. So where are you located? I'm just curious.
I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I live about 20 minutes north of Atlanta.
I see. So
great music scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my mother's family was from Athens and Milledgeville.
Yeah, Athens is not terribly far from.
Spent a lot of summers in Georgia as a little girl. Yeah.
Nice, hot and humid for sure.
Yeah, and I love the red dirt. Love the red dirt there.
Yes. And it stains everything. I hate doing yard work. It's like it's everywhere on you. Oh my God, my socks are stained forever. There's so much mud.
It won't come out.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. That's
it's terrible. It's terrible. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I've been here now decades. I hate to give away my time here, but yeah, it's quite a change from the North Coast of Ohio.
Are you?
Order your holiday meal packs today at Hy-Vee and leave the cooking to us. Order traditional meals, small crowd meals, or a la carte meals. You can even customize your holiday meal by choosing from a variety of meats, sides, pies, and more. There's something for everyone with the Hy-Vee holiday meal packs. Order in-store or online at hi-v.com. Happy holidays from Hy-Vee.
There's a little bit of magic in photographs. With a click of a button, we can capture a moment in time and keep it forever. At Rockbrook Camera, let their creative team help you transform these precious memories into unique holiday gifts to last a lifetime. Most people know Rockbrook Camera for their large selection of camera gear and expert photo advice, but they're also the area's best high-quality photo lab. Choose from a variety of gifts to personalize, such as their popular photo ornaments, high-quality canvas wraps, and photo mugs. With so many gift options ready to be personalized, it's easy to share a story, a moment, or a memory that's made to delight friends, family, or even yourself. Send joy through the mailbox with Rockbrook Camera's thoughtfully designed photo greeting cards, ready to pick up in 48 hours or less. Start creating today with help from Rockbrook Camera's friendly staff in-store or online in the convenience of your home. Visit Rockbrook Camera today, 1 block south of 168th and West Center in Omaha, 70th and Pioneers in Lincoln, or online at rockbrookcamera.com.
Oh no, I'm more into video production. My day job, I'm a video editor producer, and I work for CNN Cable News Network. That's
cool.
The headquarters here still, but we got a lot of operation in New York as well. So I really just enjoy the nuts and bolts of music, and it's always interested me as a journalist as well. Yeah. And it's been so great to stumble on you and to see this jazz music, which I just love to go out of my way to hear and try to call it up as much as I can. It's calming.
Yeah. Well, I'm a funny jazz singer. I don't do a lot of scatting. I mean, I can, but to me, it's really about the story. I'm kind of old fashioned that way. I don't like it to get so avant-garde that people don't know what they're listening to, and I've kind of been told, that, I've been called a balladeer, which is kind of funny. I did jazz at LACMA. They do a jazz series out here, which is the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and they simulcast with 88.1 Jazz FM. And I did the concert there, and some lady walked up to me. She says, "Oh, you're the balladeer." The first time I've ever heard that, like, balladeer. Okay, thank you.
You got your own style. That's really nice. That really is. I've been to LACMA. I went there years and years ago, and there was a Van Gogh exhibit. and it was just stunning. Yeah, there's great arts in Los Angeles, but yeah, Atlanta is so much like LA in that sense. It's so hard to get around. It's like
I know, and it's a wonderful venue. They do this summer series every year, and they try to incorporate as many new artists into it as they can. You have literally have, it's free, so the public can come, and it's like 2,000 to 3,000 people show up. So it's a really wonderful event. I have a show coming up in, I think it's June 13th at Vibratos. I'm going to be performing my newest record there.
good.
We just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and trying to figure out, the next thing that interests me enough to want to do it.
Yeah, you might go in a totally different direction, and a year is a lot of time before you're going to be like, okay, this is my next project. But in the meantime, you're doing a lot of great live performing.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get out more. I didn't do a lot of live performing, as nobody did during COVID, so I'm trying to do more of that. I just love the recording studio. I could just live in the recording studio.
Wow, I don't hear that very much. I hear like, oh, I love live performing. I can't stand production. It's just like, oh,
I love the recording studio. I love it. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and you have a lot of good help. So Christian Jacob is a name that I'd come across, and really interesting, involved in the movie Sully. So he must know Clint Eastwood quite well.
Right. Well, he's he kind of was part of the Tierney Sutton band. As are there's Kevin Axt, who played on one track, who's a bass player, and then you have Trey Henry, who also plays with Tierney, and then you have Ray Brinker, who plays with Tierney. And so they've been nominated for 9 or 10 Grammys. She's never won, but Christian has started a few years ago, and Tierney, they decided to start branching out. So luckily I was able to start working with Christian, and he and I have collaborated on a couple of songs. I love Christian. He's actually going to be playing for me at the Vibrato gig. And he did. So what happened with Clint Eastwood is, apparently Clint Eastwood had been following the Tierney Sutton band. And so he reached out to Tierney and Christian and said, I have a film coming up, Sully, and I'd like you to do the score. So Christian did the score. And then he turned around and I guess Clint asked him to do the 1519 to Paris. Yeah. So he did 2 films for. And I mean, Christian taught at the Manhattan School of Music. He was a teacher there. He's been nominated for probably 10 or 11 Grammy Awards. I mean, I'm very lucky. There's a deep well of incredibly talented people out here in LA. And luckily I'm able to work with most of them. So I feel very honored that way,
Where are you recording? Are you doing it all in LA, or do you send files to people doing production in other cities? Is it all done there where you're at?
I like to try to do it live because I like the intimacy of that. We recorded here at a studio called Dragonfly Creek Recording Studios. And it's a wonderful studio. Charlie Pollard owns it, and it's on a 7-acre horse ranch. So it has, his wife is a professional horseback rider. And so they board horses, and they have goats, and the goats walk around, and it's lovely. And you go up there, and it's such a wonderful atmosphere for creativity, And it's the first time I recorded there, and I was so impressed. I'll probably record there again,
Yeah, it's good to have a great atmosphere. I was reading Phil Ramone's book. He's a famous producer, worked with Peter Paul and Mary all the way to Billy Joel. And he was talking about how, it's so important as a producer to create a great atmosphere, whatever they need, whatever this artist needs, I'm going to deliver, so to make them as comfortable as possible in the studio. If they need, the magic carpet under them or whatever it takes, that's important.
Yeah, well, it was pretty amazing with Charlie, because their ranch, I don't know if you remember hearing about the Woolsey fires.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
It burned, thousands of acres out here. And his ranch was in the fire, their ranch. Luckily, the horses, they got everybody out. Everybody was safe, but everything got burned down except for the studio. which is sits in the middle of the property, and it's kind of a little round kind of building there, and the fire literally burned the entire ranch and didn't touch the studio. It was just amazing to me, you know. And when I went in there, I thought, this place is blessed. I have to record here, you know. And he had a bottle. He has a Perrier bottle that sits in the studio that's melted from the heat. That it's kind of like this. And could write a song about the Perrier bottle.
There's an inspiration there. Oh my
I know,
gosh.
right?
Wow. Yeah. Isn't that amazing though, that everything like burned around it? Did they soak it down with water to keep the embers from hitting it?
I
or
don't think he did anything.
Wow,
I mean, they had to get, you know, a dozen horses or a half a dozen horses out of there. They had to get their personal, because that fire just took over like it does out in California. It just is like a quick fire. It just catches everything in its wake. And I don't know why it burned around the studio. It's just really bizarre to me.
Oh, wow.
You know? Yeah. So.
Yeah, you have those extremes out that way too. It could be extreme drought, then you get fire season, and then all of a sudden there's a deluge. Nothing's ever like balanced. It's like
not here.
Everything at once. It's life.
I know, it's true.
It really is. When it rains, it pours, and it's always like that, no matter what. So
yeah.
I like this one song, "The Flea Markets of Paris." That's seems to be a beautiful, inspirational song. So, what are the origins of that one?
Oh my goodness. Well, it was actually written. It's kind of autobiographical for me, and it was the first time I went to Paris was with my first husband, and I've never been there before, and we ended up getting divorced, and it was just a story. I remember seeing the flea markets for the first time and just being blown away, particularly the ones that are in the older part, you know. And for some reason, I wanted to write a song about it. You know, the fact that some things glitter and some things are old, you know, and everything has a story. You know, so it kind of, I tried to tie it into my first experience of being there and the love that I felt at that time, and then how everything changed. So, you know, and I remember I don't know if you've ever been to the flea markets.
I have. Paris. I love Paris. I went there with, a wife ago or so.
Yeah.
Back to the mid 90s.
And so, you know, right? I mean, you look at something and you say to yourself, what is the story behind this old piece of furniture, you know? And I was amazed with the people that work there as well. I mean, they're old and cratered and they smoke like fiends, and you know, it was just such an interesting little piece of life, you know. So that's why I wrote that.
I know, you got to have that accordion on there, David.
I know.
Oh my gosh! I mean, you're doing anything about Paris, you got to get that classic accordion sound.
Well, that was Christian's idea. You know, he said, "I want to put an accordion in here." So I said, "How do you see the song?" And because he and I collaborated, we co-wrote it together. And he said, "Well, I see it just very simple with a piano, bass, and accordion." Because he's from there. He's from France, so. You know, I didn't question him. I'm like, well, he's the master and he's from France, so he knows what to do.
It's just such a different attitude and culture, and you know, it's something to a fault as well as what we're seeing there with the protests and everything about raising the retirement age. It's I know, not surprised really. It's just that's the French.
Yeah. Yeah, I regret that I never got to spend any time in the countryside. I've never been to the French countryside, you know.
I've been to go back.
Yeah, me too. I've been to Italy. I've been to the Italian countryside, but never France. So one of these days.
Yeah, you should definitely go back and be inspired. And you never know what songs you're going to come up with.
I'll do a French album, right? Even though I don't
Yeah.
speak French.
You got yeah. Then you get a French tutor, and you try to sing
Yeah, I
something in
know,
French.
right?
Hey, the Beatles tried that. It's funny. Billy Joel always ends up in my podcast somehow. I always have a reference, and he did a song in French, and then he performed it over there, and they were like, "What the hell is he talking about?" It's like he's like, "My French is awful, and I even had training." Oh my gosh.
I know it's hard, I mean, I did Besame Mucho on the arrangement, and I do it in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, so I had to sing it phonetically. And I must have had a half a dozen people listen to it who speak Spanish and say, "Okay, is everything right?" And we'd go back in, and I'd lay it in again, and I'd work on that pronunciation. It might take me 3 or 4 takes to get it right, but yeah, so I just wish I spoke Portuguese, because I love Brazilian jazz and I don't speak Portuguese.
My next door neighbor does. I got to give a shout out to him. He's from Brazil originally,
Yeah.
and the family
yeah.
moved to Boston. So yeah, he knows fluently. He's recently, a couple of years ago, he spent some months in Brazil, and yeah, what a unique culture that is, and to hear that
I
language.
know. I love Brazilian jazz. I just love it. I wish I could do it. And I think I have the right kind of sound for it, because it's a very smooth kind of, but it's just to speak Portuguese. I don't even know where I'd begin. Maybe I'd get that app. What is it called? Their
Babbel, is it?
Babbel?
Yeah. Did you do that before? I wish I only had those before I went to Paris or I went to Rome. It's like, I wish I, knew more about the language. I always went in the off season. So I think they were a little bit nicer to tourists, because it wasn't like a flock of Americans.
I know. Well, France is awful. Paris is really awful.
They know it, and they have no patience
Americans.
for it.
I know.
I understand that. I could get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this song, Cry Me a River. What is the instrument that starts it? I love that sound on Cry Me a River.
I think it's a flugelhorn.
Is that what that is? That's
I think so.
It evokes, I don't know. They use that a lot in like TV shows and stuff like that. It's yeah, it's got a real character to it. Flugelhorn.
Yeah.
I think I remember it being used quite a bit, like Streets of San Francisco or something like that was always using that.
Well, it's very noir. It's a very
Yeah.
noir sounding instrument. And actually Ron Stout is the flugelhorn player on that cut. And he's an amazing, he's a funny guy. He doesn't have an email. Whenever you
Maybe that's good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Stay off the grid.
I'm like, Ron, are you available? I can't get in touch with you any other way but to call you. He's so cute. He's a wonderful, consummate musician. He's played with Michael Bublé and a number of people, because he's really top line. I think flugel and trumpet are really his specialties. So
Yeah. So as far as live performing goes, do you plan on like getting out of the LA area? I mean, maybe not doing like a full tour or anything like that, but just performing in different places?
yeah, I'm thinking about New York. I think I have to come to New York more often and start singing at some of the jazz clubs there, because, New York is really kind of the jazz capital of the country. And, I'm very connected out here, but I think I need to start making more inroads out in New York, in Manhattan. So that's my plan. I don't have anything lined up yet. I'm working on I'm speaking to a new manager potentially to see what comes of that. Touring is hard, because you have to, particularly with me, because I tend to have more instruments on everything I do. I don't just work with a trio. So, all of my arrangements are pretty complex. They have a minimum of like 5 pieces, and they can go up to 8 or 9 pieces. So how do you bring the authenticity to what's on the record with a trio,
Yeah.
And it can be tricky. So, but we're looking into it. I mean, doing Signature on June 13th at Vibrato is going to be tricky, because one song has 3 horns, another song has 2 songs have 2 cellos. I have somebody who rap on Red Velvet Rope who is a bilingual rapper, so he raps partly in English and partly in Spanish. And then I have 2 gospel singers. So,
Yeah, it's quite an
so what
entourage.
do? You bring 12
right.
people with you to do one show. You kind of can't do that. So, it all takes kind of rethinking, like how do you keep the same, synthesizers are a great instrument because it can make a lot of different sounds, but it's not the same thing as having real horns. You can have horns on a synthesizer, but it's just not, it's a little less real, or.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because you talked about doing that touring, and it's just taking all this stuff on the road with you, and you want to stay true to your record and not strip it down so much where it's unrecognizable.
Right, exactly. So, we're I'm going to be talking with Christian about the 13th soon, because he's going to be my musical director on that, and we're going to figure out what instruments do we need to bring in. Do we need 1 cello and 1 horn, and supplement in a synthesizer so he can fill it, so it doesn't just sound like 1 horn, it can sound like 3 horns, so these are the kinds of things you have to think about. And for some reason, I just keep doing this to myself. I just keep adding more and more instruments to these albums. They get hard.
Digging the rabbit hole even more now. Yeah.
I know, right? It's true. Gotta get a little smarter in that,
Yeah, it's like, wait, I might have to play this live, and I'm not sure if I want to do this. So and then the videos on your YouTube are great too. So some of these are like done in black and white. They evoke that film noir thing that you were talking about, and the femme fatale character. So you're bringing some of your acting chops into that as well.
Well, I actually have a script that I've had developed called Jazz Noir, which I won't go into detail about it, but it's interesting watching Perry Mason, because it's there's a lot of that in it, and it's a stage piece. It's for performing arts centers, so more to be continued. Because I don't want to give away too much on it. But it's a complex piece, because it's going to have projections of actual film noir footage and things like that, that brings people back in time, as opposed to watching it as an objective audience, so they feel like they're actually back in the 30s experiencing this. So that's in the works.
Really cool. Yeah. Wow. Well, it's wonderful to speak with you. Really, really interesting stuff. And you got a big date in June of 2023?
June 13th, I think it is. It's coming up. It's a hard room to get into. They're booked. Everybody wants to perform there. So I have this, it'll be on my website. I'll have it posted on sylviabrooks.net.
Good.
And if you decide to come out to LA, let me know. I'd love to meet you in person.
I would. I've got some family out there, a cousin in Westlake, another one in Malibu, and my aunt is still out there too. I think in Westlake near my cousin. So
Westlake is beautiful.
Love visiting the valley and just the beaches, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see you in June.
Love to see you. Love to see you. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bob, for reaching out to me. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely. What a pleasure. Take care.
Okay.
The holidays start here at Baker's, with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.